The story I'm about to tell you about happened to me while I was working at a large department store. This was during the holiday season, so instead of closing at our usual time of 8 o'clock, our store closed at 10 o'clock. I had just finished a late-night shift at work and was in desperate need of a ride home. With no other options, I decided to use my ride-sharing app to request a car. Moments later, a black sedan pulled up, and I confirmed the car and driver fit the description given in the app. I hopped into the back seat and greeted my driver, who had a strange aura about him. His eyes were hidden behind dark sunglasses, and he spoke in a low, monotone voice. I tried to strike up a conversation to make myself feel more comfortable, but he responded with short answers, as if he wanted to keep the interaction to a minimum. I was nervous because I could not understand why he was wearing dark sunglasses late at night. While he was driving, I noticed that the driver was taking an unusual route. He ignored the main roads and seemed to be purposely leading me into an unfamiliar part of town. My anxiety started to kick in, and I began to question if I had made a terrible mistake by getting into this car. My heart pounded in my chest when I realized that we were no longer in a recognizable part of town. The streets were empty, and the houses seemed abandoned. Panic set in as I wondered how to escape this crazy situation. I finally got enough courage to speak up, even though my voice was trembling with fear. I told the driver, "Excuse me, but this isn't the way to my destination. Could you please turn around?" The driver remained silent. He just looked on the road ahead. My heart sank as I realized that something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, the car tires screeched as the car stopped in front of an old, dilapidated house. The driver turned to face me and gave me a wicked smile. I knew then that I was in danger. I fumbled for the door handle, desperate to escape, but it was locked from the inside. I started panicking even more, and by this time I was pounding the window and pleading for someone to help me. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. A few seconds later, a delivery driver pulled up behind the car in a large brown delivery truck. I started banging the window even harder, and it got the attention of the delivery driver, which must have scared the rideshare guy because he got out of the car and opened the door from outside. After I got out of the car, he sped away. I ran up to the delivery driver and told him what happened, and he waited with me until the police arrived. The police knocked on the door of the house the creep had pulled up to, but no one answered, and none of the neighbors saw anything. The delivery driver told them what he saw though, and the driver was tracked down the next day and arrested. I was so happy for the guy who saved me, and I felt lucky because usually delivery drivers aren't out that late, but with the holidays right around the corner, I was lucky this guy was out that night to save me. Be careful out there and stay spooked.
This story happened to me and my partner one summer when we traveled to a foreign country for a holiday. We were excited and planned to spend the next 2 weeks enjoying the beautiful weather, people, and culture in a country we had talked for many years about visiting. My partner and I had just arrived at the airport, super excited to begin our vacation. We collected our luggage and made our way to the designated area for hotel shuttles. As we read the signs, which were in a language neither of us knew, we spotted a bus labeled with our host's name. Excited, we boarded the bus, assuming it was our shuttle. Little did we know, we were about to find ourselves in one of the most terrifying situations anyone could imagine. The bus took off, and we settled into our seats, admiring the cityscape as it faded into the distance. But as time passed, I noticed that the surroundings became less fascinating. The streets became dimly lit, and the buildings turned into decrepit structures. We quickly realized that we had taken the wrong bus. The bus driver was a middle-aged man who spoke very little English, We turned to the other passengers on the bus and asked where the bus was heading, but they also didn't speak much English and didn't seem to understand what we were asking. Instead, they stared at us in confusion. We didn't know what to do, and our phones didn't work outside of our home country. We decided to sit tight and see where the bus was taking us and thought this had to be one big misunderstanding. We were wrong, there was no misunderstanding, and we quickly came to that realization when the bus came to a stop in front of a small shop on a dirt road. When the bus stopped, the passengers who sat behind us grabbed us from behind and started pushing us out the door. Then, we were led through the back of the shop, which led to a house. We stepped into the house, and for the first time, there were people there who spoke English. There was another couple there who said they had been there for 3 weeks, and they got on the wrong shuttle, which they also believed was taking them to the same hotel we had intended to go to as well. I looked over at my partner who had been badly bruised. I felt so guilty because it was my idea to take the airport shuttle in the first place. There were 8 of us in total, cramped in a small room. All of us were coincidentally English-speaking foreigners. For the next few days, we were kept in this place where we didn't shower and barely had enough to eat. One day, another couple arrived, and there was something different about them. They walked around the room asking a lot of specific questions. The woman was reporting our answers to someone who she spoke with on the phone. A few hours later, the police arrived. At least 10 officers were on the scene. We learned that police had been investigating missing tourists in the area who had all been expected to arrive at the same hotel but never showed up. The one thing the tourists all had in common, they had all made reservations to use the hotel's shuttle service. The couple who was asking all of the questions turned out to be undercover cops posing as tourists. It turns out that the kidnappers were a part of a large human trafficking organization, and we were in real danger. They were planning to take us to a neighboring country the following day. I hope my story helps others to be more aware of using transportation services. Even if you book a ride through a reputable source, you should be aware that there are people who pose as professional drivers when they are not. They are just looking for victims. Be safe, everyone, and stay spooked.
The story I'm about to tell you happened about 6 months ago while I was using a rideshare app. I had gotten into a car accident about a week before, so my main mode of transportation was the rideshare app, but I won't say which one. For the most part, I felt safe using this app and never really had any issues until this day. When the car pulled up to my house, I noticed that the license plate was different from the one provided by the app. Honestly, I know what you're thinking, and I know it was stupid to get in the car anyway, but I was running late for a physical therapy appointment. I got into the car and asked my driver to confirm his name. We are going to call him Alex. His name was the same name provided by the app, so I just assumed he had 2 cars and the car he was using on this day wasn't his regular car. Also, he was a young guy in his mid to late 20s and looked pretty normal, so I wasn't particularly concerned. The ride to my physical therapy appointment was about 20 minutes and I was familiar with the route. About 3 minutes into the ride, I received a notification on the app that my driver had canceled my ride. I was a little confused because he was still driving and we were going in the right direction. His GPS was even taking us on the correct route. I decided to say something. "Hey, I just got a notification saying this ride was canceled." He didn't respond, so then I repeated what I had said, and he finally responded, "Yes, sometimes there's a glitch that does that, but you should be fine." As soon as he said that, I heard the doors in the car lock, and then he started going in the opposite direction of my destination, so I said, "Hey, you're going the wrong way." He didn't respond and he kept driving. When we got to a stoplight, I tried to unlock the door so I can get out, but the child lock was on, "Let me the fuck out of this car right now." I screamed at him, and he didn't make a sound. I started punching his window and moving around, which was making the car shake. I couldn't believe that the car was shaking, and nobody was noticing. His phone rang and I heard him on the phone talking to someone. He said, "Yeah, I got the product. I'm not too far away." I started screaming and he started speeding up. When we got to another light, I knew this was going to be my final chance to break free. We pulled up to the red light at a busy intersection and I started screaming so loud and shaking the car again. Finally, the old lady in the white Toyota next to us looked over and saw me crying for help. There was a young girl in her teens in the passenger seat. When the old lady pointing at the car I was in, the younger girl pulled out her phone and it looked like she was recording. The driver took off, running the red light and almost crashing into a few other cars. He finally pulled over and let me out of the car after he yelled, "Get the fuck out of my car." Then he started speeding away. I couldn't believe what happened to me. I called the company immediately and reported him and walked to a nearby coffee shop where my mom picked me up. My mom kept telling me to call the police, but I was too embarrassed that I was stupid enough to get into a car that didn't match the description of the car in the app. Also, this person had my address, and I didn't want him to retaliate against me. Sometimes I feel guilty for not reporting it because I am afraid it might happen to someone else, especially because where I live in Atlanta, a lot of young women go missing. Since that day, I haven't used another rideshare app again. I just drive myself or I ride with someone I know personally. Rideshare apps are convenient, but riders should still be careful. If the license plate or the car doesn't match the description in the app, don't get in the car. Be safe, everyone.